Hi, everyone, and welcome. Rabbi Yisroel Bernath here, and it's a real honor to be here today with Rabbi Benyamin Bresinger. Rabbi Bresinger is he is a director of Chabad Lifeline, which is a crisis and addiction drop-in center in Montreal. And Rabbi, can you just give us an idea of what a regular day looks like for you?
Sure, happy to. So, it used to be a drop-in center very much. It used to be situated near Queen Mary Snowden Metro on Queen Mary. And the drop-in crowd was made up of people. There was a lot of crack cocaine addiction. There was certainly alcoholism. There was a little bit of homelessness. It was a tough place. It was a tough place. It was a tough crowd, and they did magic. People felt at home there. It really was a drop-in center in every way of it. No one slept there. It was always, outpatient, and they were staffed with some very caring people.
And what does it look like now?
So when we came, my wife, probably about close to 30 years ago, went back to school. We had a shlichus. We were posted for a Chabad, the Babbage movement in West Orange, New Jersey, and we came across some people with in Alcoholics Anonymous, so much so that we became so enamored by them. My wife thought for her to truly do what she's being sent, right? So all of a sudden wives of people in Alcoholics Anonymous are coming to the house. And so for her to really be able to, she said, I'm going to go back to school. And she went back and she got a master's in social work at Rutgers, which we're still paying for. And she then specialized working with family members of people with addiction. So in 2007, we came to Montreal to take that drop-in center. They called it Project Pride, and to take it wherever we want. We were given a free hand, make it happen. And within about great story. We were on Queen Mary, this building. I don't know if you were in this building. You were in Project Pride. Did you ever come?
Yes.
Okay. So you remember the floors weren't flat? It was
The second floor. It had seen better days.
Absolutely. I mean, by looking at it, you see somebody who's been through a lot. They look a lot older than they are.
Yeah.
That's this place. So we were getting kicked out. I'm sitting in the office. Once a guy comes up and he says, "Listen, I own I own this building. You have a month tops out. We're demolishing the building." What? I don't know. Where am I going to go? It was cheap, very cheap. So I didn't know. The next day, this is a wild story. The next day, I'm at an event, and I start schmoozing, start speaking to one of the people there, not knowing who he is, not knowing what he does, just talking. And he was asking me about what I do. He was very interested in it. I loved hearing him. He was interested. It turned out it was the CFO of the Jewish General Hospital. Guy by the name of Laurent Ziri, who I can say hundreds, maybe thousands, for sure, hundreds of people owe their life to him for what he did. He called me the next day and he said, "I know you're saying you're looking for a place. Come on, I'll show you a place." Okay. So we came here to the corner of Côte St. Catherine and Lavoie, and there was an old big home that had vines coming down all over the wall. You couldn't see. My kids were younger then. I'm talking about 14 years ago. My kids thought it was, they called it a haunted house. It looked like a haunted house. It had been abandoned 25 years. It was the original president of the Jewish General Hospital. He built it for his family, and they hadn't lived there for so long.
Wow.
So Laurent said, "Would this place be?" I'm like, "Oh my!" By the way, the electricity, the lighting was hanging. There was no the walls were. It was a complete disaster. But I saw such potential. I was like, "Oh my gosh, what?" And he got the executive of the Jewish General Hospital and the foundation to go for it. And we've been here since.
So they gave it to you and you had to fix it up, though. They fixed it up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's, the more, if I really talk about it, the way I can get all swelled up with such a, like, I can argue a lot of times, like saying that, being logical and don't believe in miracles. I can get into that argument with myself, even though I'm a rabbi. But at the end of the day, do I really believe that? I struggle sometimes. But when I tell that story, when I live that, it's like, wow.
That's an amazing story. So today you're housed in this place. And what does this place consist of? What does it do?
Okay, so my wife, by coming in and being the clinical director, she hired now a whole staff that includes, and this tells you what we do by who's here. So we have, right now we have 3 addiction counselors who are working with adults with substance or behavioral addictions. So they call that behavioral or process addiction. So it's not necessarily a substance you're taking in, you're ingesting, but it could be gambling. It could be, we see a lot, probably 20% of what we see here is sex addiction, pornography addiction. And so there's the staff, 3 full-time working with adults coming in for their own addiction. Then we also have a full staff that works with youth. And youth are, I have a passion for youth. Because when I was 11, 12 years old, my brother, who's passed away, he was 17, 18 years old, and he was out of control, off the walls, insane behavior. And thank God he was able to get help. And then actually he died for a different reason at 41. He had acute leukemia. But from the time when he was 20 till 41, he had a family, but those few years, me and my little sister, watching this happen, watching the dynamic in the house, watching my parents be helpless. So my real passion in Chabad Lifeline is we got to be looking for the kids who are the hidden victims. These are the kids, they're not necessarily misbehaving.
Right.
Usually not. But they're in a home where there's some kind of chaos.
Right.
And so that's what our youth department is all about. That's what a full youth department. We have a behavioral addiction. So we have sort of a sex addiction therapist who's only 2 in Quebec. She's here. And we also have a full department that reaches out to schools. So who's coming in now? I said in Snowden, Metro, crack addicts and home. It's a different type of clientele now. We're not by a subway in the same way. It's just not the same dynamic. So we have, there's an expression, addicts with 2 cars in the driveway. A lot more of that than ever. A lot more families than ever.
Wow.
A lot more screen. They call it tween addiction, which is screens, teenagers on screens. A lot of that we're seeing, a lot of that, especially through the pandemic. So we're free to anybody, free. We raise a budget. We don't get any government funding, and there's no waiting list.
Wow. First of all, I'm really sorry about your brother, and his memory should be for a blessing.
Oh man, thank you.
This question is going to sound very innocent, but I want to understand, what is addiction? Like you're saying that, an addict with 2 cars in the driveway. It sounds like a typical person. How do you know you're an addict?
Yeah, so that's a very common question. And usually a vast majority of the time, if somebody's asking that of themselves, they are an addict. If they're genuinely asking that question, And let me address it. So there's something called the central organizing principle, COP, of a person's day. So it doesn't mean that I'm drinking the whole day, but it means that I'm thinking about it, I'm buying it, I'm hiding it, I'm planning it, I'm feeling bad about it, I'm sleeping it off. So it becomes, and that's when kids become secondary. Even a person's own kids become secondary. So if you wanted to think about addiction in a way, it's not about the alcohol, it's not about the behaviors, it's really about the relationship.
With the behavior.
Yeah, the
or
relationship.
With the substance, or with the substance.
Whatever self-sabotaging behaviors or substance, whatever it is, yeah, it's the relationship. Where do I place it as far as my priorities?
So for the person who has a gambling addiction, for example, I see that in substance, but a gambling addiction, how does that manifest itself?
Well, you mean how does it? What do we see as far as people
Yeah, and saying like
gambling?
I mean, there's people who can go. I mean, here in Montreal, I know people who go to the casino. I've never myself been there, but I know people who go and they spend $200, and that's great. Or I know some guys that get together and they have a game of cards, and that's the end of it. When does that look? How does that transfer over to I'm an addict? Or
Right. So that's the same thing with alcohol, right? It's the same idea. Yeah, there's nothing, you have 200 guys sitting or women sitting and drinking. It doesn't mean they're alcoholics. But the numbers actually, if you forget about 200, let's talk about 10 people in a room. 10 people in a room drinking. The numbers tell us that at least one of them potentially could be or is an addict. So we're talking about 10%. And that was before, by the way, that was before the medical community bought into, and still is some, including behavioral addictions. So if you throw that in now, it's many more than 1 out of 10.
if you're at a party, the odds are someone's going to be an addict there.
Depends on if there's 10. Yeah, of course. If there's more than 10 people. Yeah. That's why, by the way, when I speak to especially rabbis or any clergy, but rabbis in particular, I think it's incumbent, absolutely necessary to find out who you're encouraging to make a l'chaim. Before, we want to have camaraderie, we want to have fellowship, we want to be welcoming. That is who I believe that is who Chabad is, and there's a great place for a l'chaim, absolutely, but not for an addict.
Unfortunately, Chabad has gotten that negative stigma attached to it, that it's a place to go drink.
You know what? And I understand the role. This is not a new thing. This is a sacred way of people coming together and loosening up and connecting. The truth is, it could be very holy. It is, not could be, it is. But as soon as you enter into the picture, a person with an addiction, then it definitely could be deadly.
Look, the origin of alcohol is sacramental, right? That's why alcohol was created, or wine and other sort of beverages are sacramental. I mean, obviously, in the Jewish community, we know that all of the greatest events are sanctified with a glass of wine.
Right, and that's why it can be so confusing. And that's why we meet, we have clients here that for me to, sometimes they're working with a counselor, whatever, and the counselor will tell them, 0 alcohol. No, I have to, and they'll end up saying, speak to, the rabbi, because I have to explain to them, this is specifically, don't do it. We've been having a sober Seder for years.
That's
sober
amazing.
Seder. And actually my kids, growing up, they're always at a sober Seder. I was always, and they would have their wine, not kids, 15, 16, whatever it was, they would have their wine for the Seder purposes. It's kind of like under the table doing it. Everyone else is having grape juice, because my kid, thank God, those kids who are doing that, or those people, they're not addicts. So for a non-addict, they have to, it's law, they have to. But for somebody who is an addict, it's the opposite.
It's interesting because that's why I'm asking that question, is that it's interesting to see, like, you now, it's almost like to you it's a classification, but I'm just wondering how that person, to the person, how does that person get classified?
So not so simple. It's not so simple. But the way, if a person thinks there's a problem, if a person's being told it's a problem, it's worthy. It's worth that to check it out. But they can check themselves also. And one of the way of thinking is, if it's not a problem, then don't do it for a month.
Right.
But not just don't do it. Notice what's going on when you want to do it over the month. Notice. Be mindful. What are you feeling now? What's going on in the body? What's happening around you? So that's one way, because remember, it's
Great
a relationship.
advice. Yes.
Yeah, but you know what? It's good advice, but I'm just thinking about it now. It's easy for me to put that out there, but that means you're mindful. That's not so, that's not so simple. But so
it's not easy. It's not easy. But if your friends are saying you have a really big problem with alcohol, and you're like, no, I don't, and you can go cold turkey for a month and not think about it and not want to it not even be part of your life, then obviously you're not an addict. But if you can't do that, then you have to really check yourself and ask yourself that question. That's really what I wanted to understand. Now, I think that's a really great litmus test.
Yeah, but I would also just clarify that part. There is such a thing as periodics. So there could be somebody who can go 6 months without a drink.
Right.
But that's a good beginning, is to go for, let's say, a month and to check yourself. And there's other things too. There's other ways also of looking at it. I think really crucial is doing an assessment or a screening, because
can you do a screening?
Yeah, sure. That
Okay.
We offer that.
Yeah.
Our screening, we would go to colleges and CJEPs and meet with their counseling department. And one of the things we would talk about is our screening, because our screening is very thorough. Mm-hmm. And for instance, we would ask people in the screening, is your use of pornography? Not as a moral question, but as a clinical question. Just, what's. And what I heard a bunch of times was, there's no way we're going to ask that question to our clients, because we wouldn't know what to do if they, So here you have people coming in to well-trained, caring clinicians who are not going to certain places with people. So, how many students are smoking pot a lot and coming into the places depressed? Oh, absolutely. And they're not putting it together.
Absolutely. So, it's self-medication, right?
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be. Yeah, absolutely. So we still, a lot of in the screenings, what could come out is the traumas that might have led to the self-sabotaging behaviors. So it's good. But again, I think somebody knows. I think a person knows.
I'm not 100% sure of that. That's why I'm asking that question. So I want to go to the next step, because this is very interesting to me. So I now have an idea of how someone could know if they're an addict. Let's say someone knows, like you're saying, someone knows for however reason. There's a lot of stigma attached to it. There's a lot of, who wants to be vulnerable like that? So to someone who has an issue and they're not ready to be vulnerable, and they're not ready to go get help, what's your advice to them?
Come on a Zoom and leave your camera off, and come and just be a fly on the wall of one of our Zoom meetings. We have two.
You can have a Zoom. You can come to one of your Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
And you can keep your camera off.
Keep your camera off, and don't put a name there. Just listen.
You can be completely anonymous, as it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So those meetings are critical.
Critical, accompanied by other things, but at least if you like you were describing, a person who's, let's say, not ready or not willing, okay, This is like such a non-committal, anonymous, really no effort. I mean, be driving in a car, whatever they're doing, they don't have to look. You can be part of a Zoom. That's one of the blessings of Zoom, I think, because you can have that type of.
It's amazing because I've known people over the years who were in recovery, as they called it. And I'm not so familiar. I'll be honest, I'm not so familiar with the recovery community, but I've known people, and the way they talk about it, oh, I'm 15 years clean and I'm 20. It just becomes like its own religion to a certain extent. And so not everybody wants to identify that way. And it seems, for some people, that's actually really exciting, and they can identify with people that way, and they have a shared community and a shared place of origin. But for some people, if they have an issue, they may not want to remember it. They may not want to know about it.
I think everybody is different in a lot of ways, and I don't think there's one size fits all.
Right.
There's a real importance about remembering it, though. I mean, that's because if a person is an addict or even not an addict, but let's say on the spectrum, right? So picture there's you got a full-blown addict, and you have for somebody who's never touched alcohol, right? So there's dependence over here. You keep on moving, there's like leisure over here. So somewhere on there, let's say if they're around dependence, which means they're necessarily drinking with others. Now they're drinking on their own.
Right.
Okay. There's different ways of monitoring that. So if a person is finding themselves in those areas, the important thing is to know that this is something that's going to keep on coming back and biting me. So I need to remember, do I have to call myself an addict? Do I have, some people will insist, absolutely. I don't know if that's the case. It depends on the person. Whatever you can do to remind yourself, number one, you're not bad. Number two, you got a struggle. Number three, everybody in the world has a struggle. Now, what do I do to deal with it? So calling yourself
number one, you're not bad. Number two, you have a struggle. And number three, everyone has a struggle. So just deal with it.
Yeah. Easier said than done.
Absolutely. But that's a really great formula. The first, knowing that you're not bad. You're not a bad person. It's not, don't be ashamed of it. Right. You're not a bad person.
Right.
And one of the things that I love about Judaism, and I've thought about this, I think often about core values. Someone asks you, what are your core values? What are the things that you live by? And I consider within Judaism, in the framework of Judaism, I consider struggle to be a core value. It's not a means to an ends, it's the ends. We say struggle, embrace the struggle, love the struggle. Struggle is a good thing.
Maybe for myself, but for somebody else.
Well, I don't want to wish it on someone else, but I'm saying,
and I don't want to wish it on myself too. Yeah, I also don't want to, look.
But I'm not. See, that's what I'm saying. I don't necessarily agree with that because struggle is a very powerful thing. I do wish it on myself. Obviously, I don't wish it together with suffering or pain. Well, suffering is my choice, but I don't wish it together with pain. But struggle is an amazing thing, and it allows us to somebody I used to tell me that whatever the same thing that holds up the Brooklyn Bridge kills most people, right? Stress. So maybe not stress, but struggle, the ability to work through something and to challenge yourself. I think that is a very powerful, done in a healthy way. It's such an amazing power that we have to change and to become better.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is it's hard to admit. I don't want to admit it because a big part of me always wants to have the easier, softer way. But the fact is, it's only been what's been a struggle. Not only, but a lot of the times, any growth has come through struggle. But more important than growth, it's more about like there's God in this world, right? There's God in this world, but the big but could mean that I don't experience, I don't see, I don't feel, I don't know that there's God in the world. So now, what's the approach? Am I going to struggle for that? In other words, am I going to do what I can to get rid of what's in between me and reality? I heard one said that the ultimate sign of sobriety is not using, is a commitment to reality at all costs.
A commitment to reality at all costs. I love that.
It's a tall order, but I think that's what we're talking about. So that's a struggle because we're not living in a world, in a system, in a place where it's all accessible. It's not.
Right.
Well, that's a fact. God's not as accessible. I'm not necessarily going to truly connect without some work, without some struggle, and some.
But who decided? What year was it decided that life is supposed to be easy?
I think it was 19. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
By the way, a lot of the people listening don't know from 19.
Yeah, especially 1970s. Yeah,
definitely not. You're ancient, man.
I am. Yeah, I am. Look, I mean, the fact is, one of the things that came out of the 60s and 70s was the struggle is useless. They're protesting the struggle. It's like live free without struggle, and look at
what that's done.
Yeah,
look at what that's done to society.
Right. Yeah, no question.
Right.
You know what's interesting? What's interesting about what you just said? We hear stories, right? I mean, we have 50, maybe 100 a year of people telling their stories, because it's twice a week we have this. So if you times that by 15 years, one of the common things we hear about, is people will say they wish their parents would have had more structure in the house.
Really?
Yeah. You think the opposite, right? But no. They wish there were more rules.
Wow.
Not rigidity. We're not talking about rigidity. That's just as dangerous as no rules.
Right. Not the drill sergeant, the structure.
The boundaries.
Right.
The guidance.
It's the army without the drill sergeant.
Yeah, good. Very good. Yeah.
It's the structure. Yeah. That's amazing. That's an amazing nugget.
Yeah. I know so well that boundaries and learning about what I can do, what I can't do, these are all part of reality. This whole idea that you can do anything you want, where does that come from? Maybe I can do anything I want. I can't do anything I want. I can do anything that I'm meant to do. But no, so it's like, okay, give me that, and that's what I'm hearing from people. You'd never think that. Every time I hear it, it's like, what?
Yeah.
No. So going back to the 60s and 70s, oh my gosh, did that type of attitude create a lot of havoc.
What's interesting today is that kids today are a result of that without knowing it, because they didn't live through it. So they have the results without the process. And so that's the great challenge is, now we have to think about what's meaningful and what's important and what's my life about. And we don't even have any structure to be able to base anything like that on. This is a conversation that I seem to be having more and more today. So many people are talking about this today.
I think it's kind of like it breaks down to the difference between reacting and acting. See, I think that the carefree times of the 60s and 70s was a reaction to the rigidity of post-World War II. It was a reaction. So then they had this, and so we're like, it's always it's finding the balance. I think that's what Judaism is. I believe is the message of the Jewish concept is, yes, structure, yes, but not rigidity.
Yeah. I think every organization, every company has this problem, because the the CEO or the founder of the company had to go through a tremendous amount of struggle. The one who founded the organization had to go through a tremendous amount of struggle. Come in, 20 years later or 30 years later, comes some employee. The culture of the organization still has that struggle within it, but they never went through it. So it's almost like the founder or the CEO wants them, the director wants them to live through that struggle.
Yeah.
But they never did.
That's interesting.
And I think that a lot of, and it's the same thing with today's generation. They're living through the struggle without knowing the struggle. And the result is that somehow they decided that life is supposed to be easy. And when life is not easy, they say, why isn't life easy? And it's all about what I need, my needs. And I would love to be able to change that and say, don't ask what I need, ask what I'm needed for.
I would wholeheartedly agree. At the same time, I would offer a defense. And I would say, when a person is of the opinion that things should be easy, and why is there a struggle? It's not because they woke up like that. I think that the ultimate gift we can give to our children, and it's very hard and easy for me to say because I'm a grandfather, I don't have little children, but if I can help my child with resilience, if I don't empower my child with resilience, then why would they think that life is not easy?
What is resilience? Resilience is the result of the struggle.
Resilience is embracing the struggle. Resilience is facing that which is in front of you, not being rescued. Resilience is being empowered by challenges that are meant, are healthy challenges, tailor-made. Resilience has to do with giving the space necessary for the child to be able to make mistakes, at the same time know that they have your back. It's a hard thing to give as a parent.
And how would you do that? If a parent came to you and asked you that, how would you do that? How would you give your child that?
I would say, first and foremost, look inside of you. Don't look outside yet. Don't look at your kid. How are you with resilience? Where's that at? And then I would look at that as a personal goal, is to check myself and to see, where am I with embracing struggle? Where am I with my attitude about wanting to be rescued, about resenting the world, about arguing with those around me? Where am I with my acceptance? Acceptance is very strong. It sounds like it's not, but to be accepting what's going on around me and knowing my place in it takes so much strength. So if I can get that, and I'm not going to get that, right? It's not there to get. If I can work on that and see it for what it is, then I can hopefully impart it to my children. Children, your children, at a supper table, let's just, I don't know, a supper table, children are there, right? And I don't know, the wife says to the husband something about, how is your day? And the husband says something, oh, there was a real problem with this. And if the wife would say back, he's an idiot, that guy. Why you always say that? Or the other way, husband, wife, whatever it is. Or think about what that message is. Right? Versus, wow, that's tough, but you stayed with it, or whatever it is. Children sponge, there's a sponge there. They get the idea that it's not about pushing everything away. It's about, and like I said, I'm a grandfather, so it's easier for me to talk about, but I think resilience, helping our children grow with strength and confidence, is really their birthright.
It's interesting that when I'm listening to you, I'm listening to, it's not what you're going to necessarily say, it's what you're going to experience. It's the nonverbal communication. more than the verbal communication. It's living by example. If you want something for your kids, you have to look at that within yourself, like you said, and you have to find that within yourself, and then you'll live by example, and by example your kids will pick that up.
100%. At the same time, you have to look at your parents. So in other words, just like I said, if you're not taught, if a kid this nowadays is wants it easy because they weren't taught resilience, okay, well, those who were teaching resilience, did they get that taught? And especially the Jewish people, you gotta, it's hard to wrap our heads around this, but it wasn't so long ago, and it was forever, thousands of years, where there was great threats constantly to our physical well-being.
Absolutely.
Think about the stored trauma that gets passed on from one generation to another. I mean, my grandmother told me that, I don't know how this physically happened, but somehow they tied her father to a horse by his beard. So I don't know how that would work out. And they dragged him around. He was around town. I mean, and the little girl, seeing that. She also told me that the town they lived in, there wasn't a hospital. So their mother was taken to a big city, to a hospital, and father came back alone. And the door opened and he said, "Where's mommy?" He said, "No, mommy died."
That's another example of the struggle, and we are results of that. We are results of that. I sometimes say to my kids that when I was younger, I didn't get Hanukkah gelt, I got Hanukkah guilt.
That's great. Yeah.
But and I see that I deal a lot with relationships. So I see that a lot with young people. I always, in the Jewish community, there's this discussion about intermarriage. And I think the discussion has to change because young people don't want to get married because they don't have role models for relationships. Majority of them come from divorced and broken homes. So how would you expect somebody from a broken home to want to get into a relationship and have the tools to be in a healthy relationship? So
how would you expect somebody, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, please.
How would you expect somebody not to come from a broken home?
Right.
We just talked about for thousands of years, the amount of trauma from one generation to the next. It's unbelievable. I look over here out my window is a Jewish General Hospital. You know how that came about? I think in the 1920s, there was a Jewish graduate from McGill Medical School who was working as an intern at a local Catholic hospital, and the staff went out on strike because they allowed a Jew to be a doctor intern over there.
I can't imagine that. I just can't imagine that. I've heard that story, and I'm sure you for sure have heard that story so many times. Could you imagine outside your window, there's going to be a strike, and you ask them, "What are you striking?" It's because there's a Jewish doctor in there.
Can you imagine?
I can't imagine it.
I could. I grew up in a high school that had a lot of anti-Semitic violence. I'm over dramatizing.
I grew up in Chicago. When I was 14 years old, I was playing basketball with my friends, and somebody came over to me with a gun and stuck it to my head and said, "Hitler should have finished you off." I'm well aware of it. I still can't imagine that there's going to be a riot outside your building over there at the hospital because there's a Jewish doctor. But we do. I mean, that wasn't that long ago. We do live with this collective trauma. And so today, when we're, thank God, in a thriving world, the question is, how do we raise children who are healthy and not carry on? I mean, I think for you and I, it's already too late, and I think that our parents have the best intentions, wanted exactly what we're talking about, to not transfer that trauma, to do the best we can. And I say to my kids sometimes, I know you'll have what to talk to your psychologist one day about, I'm sure, and really what I say that is because I want them to know that therapy is okay. But but at the same time, and I'm happy that we got into this conversation today, because I think that it's a really important thing. How do we transfer this now to the next generation and raise healthy people? Because there's so many givens within the Jewish community, and I use the example of marriage as a given, but where are the tools to be able to navigate that? And that goes with anything: the struggle, the addiction. Where are the tools to be able to navigate? If you have an issue, it's very, very normal to keep it inside, to not share it, to be ashamed of it. That would be obvious. It would take a tremendous amount of strength to say, I have an issue, or even to say, I don't know what a healthy marriage looks like. Or I don't know what being a healthy adult looks like. And then there's another element, and this is something that I see so much as a rabbi, and that is you'll have that moment of vulnerability where someone will come to you and they will share that, and it'll be just a moment, and you have a choice. Either you can ignore it or embrace it.
Absolutely. Yeah. What brings us back to the original, conversation, that the original part of the conversation, which had to do with, am I here to accomplish, or am I here to receive? Is it about, we talked also because we had an Instagram, right? You had said some amazing things about how is to speak. Are you speaking to listen or listening to speak?
Yeah.
Well, I think the general thing that actually, by us talking for the last few hours, which has been great, coming up for me is we have people to look at. We have Judaism to look at, to learn from, and to go forward with. One of the number one differences I see in the last 100 years with oppression, there are people who are oppressed, and what comes of it? If the people who are being oppressed become victims, or people who become oppressed become leaders. That's the difference. So It's really about reacting versus acting. So does the struggles make me stronger, or does it swallow me up? And we're in a culture, unfortunately, which somehow idolizes victimhood. It's like, it's the greatest thing. I have staff members who not Jewish, and they would talk about, we need to involve a minority here, a minority there. I said, one second, I'm Jewish. I'm part of the minority.
No, but you apparently, because you're white, you're not a minority. I understand.
Yeah. And not only that, you're Jewish, and Jewish people aren't oppressed.
Right.
Okay. So, why not?
Right.
Why do we have the Jewish General Hospital here?
Because
the reaction,
because
the reaction to the struggle was not to be swallowed up, but to go in and build the best hospital in Quebec.
That's right.
And you look at all the survivors, not all of them, of course not, there's no all, but I come from Jersey, right? That's where Schindler's List survivors ended up, a lot of them. You'd expect somebody who came from that type of trauma to become a murderer, not a builder. How in the world could people who saw such destruction become builders? And they are. You know how many Schindler's List street names in Jersey? Schindler's List Way, Schindler's List Drive. Why? Because they're survivors from Schindler, and they want to honor him. And they built whole sections of New Jersey, complete communities they built with their own hands. They came from Auschwitz with no language, with no money. They weren't construction people. They had no idea. They came, and all of a sudden, I went to one guy who was fundraising then for Rabbinical College of America, which is where I worked for 17 years. And I went to one person's, a survivor, and there was a big picture of a religious Jew next to the window. And there was a mall. The window was a mall, like right there. So the guy says to me, he says, "You see that?" I said, "What?" "There's the picture, the window." "Yeah, it's a mall." He goes, "It's my mall." Okay. He says, but you know where I got that from? And he pointed the picture at a religious Jew who was his rabbi going back in Europe.
Wow.
Yeah. Here's a guy who, and actually he's known personally, but he came to America. He worked in a dépanneur kind of thing because he had no skills, didn't have the language. Within 2 years, he owned it. Within a year or two after that, he had a few of them, and now he's got a mall.
Wow. Then
Are
the
we
survivors,
victims or not?
and I thank you for bringing that up, because the survivors are such a great example, the Holocaust survivors. And again, like you said, not all of them, but many were able to come and from nothing build incredible. I mean, we, especially, I would say, even in the Montreal Jewish community, we are so grateful to what they built, because there's an infrastructure in the Montreal Jewish community that is so amazing. And a lot of that was the money of the Holocaust survivors.
It defies logic, Rabbi.
Yeah.
It defies logic.
Yes.
It's proof that there is a God.
There's also proof that you could, that exactly what we're talking about, it's possible. It's possible to be able to come out of something that's so difficult, that struggle, that trauma, and build something amazing.
And I think it translates to driving home with your kids in the car. If I'm driving home and the kids are in the car and there's somebody going a little bit slow in front of me, or cuts me off, or whatever it is, and I get angry and I point a finger, what that did was I just became, in front of my kids, a victim.
Yes.
Do I want the kids to know that they're a victim? There's righteous indignation. Righteous indignation is the opposite, I believe, of faith.
Yes.
And we can make a point for it. He is a lousy driver. He is cutting me off. He's okay. And therefore, it makes sense that I got pissed off. Okay, I get to, okay. But I'm not, then I have to be able to come back to the kids or whatever and be able to show them that, you know what, he didn't know it was me. I'm not a victim here.
Yeah.
I'll show him. I'll drive with my hands on the wheel a little bit slower or something. So I think that's the paradigm shift that we can learn from the past. It's nothing that we're coming up with.
Yeah. This conversation has taught me something very important, amongst many things, but it's taught me, I understand why people come to you, because you're very easy to talk to. You're vulnerable, you're real, you're someone who you can confide in. And I understand that now. And we need more people in the world like you. We really do. This has been an unbelievable gift, this conversation. And if somebody needs your help, where can they go?
So our website is a good first try. It's ChabadLifeline.com, ChabadLifeline.com.
And is there a way to message you directly there, confidentially?
Yeah, you can just ask. But the beautiful thing, you don't need to, because our staff are an extension. Our staff are all about, they have to be. This is the culture here, non-judgmental, compassionate, and the sense of urgency with guidelines. And but by all means, you can definitely message me through the website or through calling here.
And if they want to support you, they can go to the website as well. You have a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, there's no waiting list, by the way.
It's unbelievable.
And this is Quebec, right? No way to imagine.
So, and that's part of why you don't get government funding. So you don't have to have that waiting list or have to deal with all that bureaucracy.
Yeah, I don't know if that's, bottom line is there's no waiting list.
That's amazing.
Yeah, there's no waiting list. And still 30% increase in the last 2 years.
I believe it.
In traffic, and 30% increase in expenses.
What is most of what you're seeing as far as the increase?
Parents coming terrified of their kids being in their rooms all the time, wanting to know what's going on.
So how does that, parents being terrified of kids in their room, how is that ending up in an addiction center? So
that's actually a beautiful development, because it used to be, like you said, addiction was like those guys over there or there. It's not, it's
Yeah.
taboo. Now the word addiction, and with the use of screens and phone, everyone knows or says about themselves they're an addict. They can't get off their social media. They're good. So, but when things come up, like kids aren't coming out of their room to eat properly, like they're not with their friends anymore, they're staying, like all kinds of things are going on. So at least, I don't know how always, but a lot of times, whether it's referrals from doctors or other places or community members, they're seeing how this is not a situation of a kid just wanting to be on his own. There's something more at work. And the way I can visualize it or maybe describe it is, if you had, you have your kid, 11-year-old kid, and they have their front door, or they have a door to the outside that there's no locks. So you don't see the kid going out, coming in. You don't see who's coming in, who's going out. And that's what the internet affords on 11, 12-year-olds. The difference is that there are substantial money out there looking for that kid's door to come in. So whether it's gaming, which is a huge problem, or it's pornography, or it's social media, whatever it is, if it's in excess and it's taking the person away from normal functions, which it is a lot of times, then they should look at it as, is this addiction or not? And whether it is or isn't, whether it is,
seeing, right? So that's what you're seeing more.
Yeah. That's what we see. Yeah.
And I like that. Like, it's true. It used to be othered a lot, and now that stigma has been broken, which is really special and really great. And I hope that a lot of more people are being helped as a result of that.
Me too.
Thank you so much, and it's been really an honor to spend this time with you.
I appreciate very much all that you do, Rabbi. You are a gift to any community that you're in, and I'm grateful to be in your community here in Montreal.
The feelings are mutual.
Okay, thank you.